Hi, welcome back to Wine Mastery. We are going to taste a wine all the way from the other half of the hemisphere. We're going to taste a wine from South Africa. And it is a Merlot, and we're going to taste it in a moment. So, as I said, it's a wine from South Africa. Let's have a look at the bottle and the label. There we go. Blockhouse Merlot. So Merlot can sometimes be a little bit bland, a little bit soft.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me...
Not there's necessarily anything wrong with it being soft.
No, it's horses for courses, again, it's a time and a place. But yeah, in general, a Merlot for me is something I tend to overlook, and I shouldn't do. That's wrong of me, because, you know, the nature of the business, I should be having my finger in all pie, so to speak. But yeah, Merlot is probably, I would say, not underrated, but one that I take for granted. I don't often think, oh, you know what, I really fancy a Merlot tonight.
I wonder why that is.
Don't know.
Because seeing it's middle of the road, you think, and so you go from one either side?
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe I've just not met the right Merlot yet.
Maybe. Okay, so let's have a look at the price. Very important.
Very.
$7.99.
Oh, John,
Okay.
you'd be pleased with that.
I'm very pleased with that. I mean, not as pleased as I could be, but pleased enough. Pleased enough.
Sorry. Yeah, but $7.99, that is, nobody can argue with $7.99. I think $7.99
We did have that £4.50 bottle of...
We did, but John, you've got to let that go.
I find it very difficult.
But no, that was super. But again, $7.99, you know, £8 barring a penny.
Yeah.
Isn't too drastic in today's day, you know, as things are. So with that in mind, let's have a go.
Let's have a look at the colour.
Yeah, let's have a look.
Okay.
Ooh.
That's deep, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
That is.
Would you call that burgundy?
Yeah, and that is. I don't know if this sounds odd, but saying like this, that's a stereotypical red. When you see that, you think, oh,
oof,
yeah, oh, oof. That's very. It's a bit. It's very thick. You can see that burgundy colour in there. It looks inviting, as they all do. So let's get straight onto the nose.
Okay. Oh, that's quite fierce, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
I'm getting cherry. A little bit. It's got a little bit of sort of Rioja-esque about it.
Well, I'm liking your cherry, but I'm getting the. I know what you mean by the Rioja-esque. For me, it's cherry. There's plum, but there's also what I would describe as tobacco, and I think that's what the
probably where I'm getting the Rioja connection.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's good. That's actually. So, all right, so far so good. I'm actually quite impressed with that. As I said earlier, Merlot is something I tend to overlook, and after just having a smell of it, I'm thinking, have I been doing myself an injustice here? These.
It is really fascinating, isn't it? The nose is. No, it's got a lot to give that.
And it's $7.99.
Yeah.
For that money, it's showing well.
Yeah.
Okay, obviously, let's go for it.
Let's go for the taste. That's powerful, isn't it?
Yes.
Cherries, again. I'm getting that on the palate.
Okay, yeah, and I get the plum.
Yeah.
And I'm getting, I don't know what that flavour is, but the one that I did describe as tobacco. But that is absolutely brilliant. Looking back at that, because what we always say is if you can get it on the nose, you get it on the palate, that is a sign of a good wine.
And I'm getting that right at the end. I'm getting sort of like that dry mouth, so which suggests a sort of high tannin. But I didn't really notice that it wasn't too intrusive whilst the wine was in my mouth.
I think I was concentrating more on the fruit than the tannins, which in itself is a good thing, isn't it? Oh yeah, get it, yeah. You're right, you're right. The tannins aren't quite there, but the fruit outweighs that. Yeah. And even then, it did come across, I thought it was going to not be good. I thought that's going to be quite harsh. But then as soon as it started, it kind of dissipated. So like, have a bit, then we'll take that back. That's good. I liked that. Well, that's quite a surprising, for me personally. So it's a personal journey, isn't it? But for me there...
I wouldn't have recognised that as a Merlot.
Oh, yeah, let's go back to that. It's what you recognise as a Merlot, isn't it? Because in my mind, it's good. It's the plum, but other than that, yeah, it's leaning more to... That's probably why I like it. It's because it's got that Rioja style, isn't it? That's probably why I'm enjoying it. I see. But do other Merlots have this? Because if they do...
No, because I've had some that are a lot softer than this.
Surprising? No, that's the wrong word, because it shouldn't be surprisingly good, should it? Maybe I had this expectation and it's taken it to there.
Yeah. Made you want to, for me anyway, it's made me want to think, I too think I've been, we haven't reviewed many Merlots, so maybe we should sort of pepper a few more into there, given the taste of pepper.
I like how you accentuate that, get that in there, John, that's brilliant. Brilliant, the pro. but no, that is, I'm not going to say pleasantly surprised to give it cut, but I am pleasantly surprised. I didn't.
It's not what you were expecting, and it's better than obviously $7.99. I pegged it there. I thought it was going to be, and it's not what I expected it to be. But I'm pleasantly surprised by what it is.
Yeah. I mean that's got that lick. I'm doing that. That lip licking kind of. That was delicious. Like the jamminess of the Cabernet Sauvignon, where you go, what was that? It's giving me a bit of that as well. The feels.
It's good balance, isn't it? The length isn't incredible, but it's not bad.
No, it's holding its own.
Yeah.
Actually, we've got to come back, and it's not all about the price, but come back to $7.99 thinking. I could deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
moving on to pairing now.
Pairing. I get too caught up. So I'm going to let you go first. Sorry.
You're going to have to.
I've thought about it. Okay, right.
Go on.
No. I want you to. Because I think a little bit more while you're.
While I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Well, you could actually. I was thinking you could actually move to sort of like a red meat with this. But it would probably also, depending on the joint and the sauce you're using, it would also probably go with something like a pork or game food. So sort of the pheasant or even pigeon. Actually, I think it would go with. So yeah, that's where I'd stick with this. Pigeon. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had pigeon. I don't think I have.
Have you not?
I don't think I have.
There's a lot of them in Trafalgar Square.
I can imagine. I don't think I'd like one of those. Well, I don't know. Maybe I would. So when I was just saying that, I have to think that immediately. What jumped into my head was cheddar.
Okay. A strong cheddar or a mild cheddar?
Like a big traditional unpasteurised cheddar, be it cheddar gorge, Lincolnshire poacher, all the above. Because this has got for me a robustness, and that, I think that word robust came into my head, and I thought, right, cheese, robust, good bit of like Montgomery cheddar. There are a fair few of these, but they do have to be unpasteurised, at least like kind of 12 to 18 months old. And I honestly think that robustness would take each other on. But then it comes down to that mood thing again, as we were talking, like, this is definitely a kind of winter, no, it could be any time you want, but I could see that as a winter's day, and just a big chunk of that with bread and butter, perhaps, if you wanted it. And again, I just like the cheese on its own, but those two together would be like a nice evening of, we always say it, cliche, sitting in front of the fire, a bottle of that, big chunk of that, good book. Happy days.
For our American and other overseas viewers, obviously they might not be able to get pasteurised cheddar. Are we going to go to Old Amsterdam?
We'll get Old Amsterdam, we're fine, but I don't think we can get that in America, will they?
They might do, but anyway, go on.
Well, if not that, we'll say anything. So they have Monterey Jack over there, isn't it? I think there's two places, isn't there, in America that can stock unpasteurised cheddar. I think New York's one. I don't know who the other one is. But there's
States, as in States, you mean?
Yeah. Old Amsterdam would be a good one to go for. Again, that chunkiness, robustness. Yeah. So our friends in the States, I would say any kind of cheddar. But if you're over here, you're lucky enough to have some unpasteurised cheddar.
Okay, good. And if you're in mainland Europe, pushing him now.
I don't know where to.
Old Amsterdam.
Old Amsterdam or Manchego. Manchego would be a good one.
Is that German?
Spanish.
Okay, it's Manchego. Okay.
Yeah, and you can get different ages of the Manchego. So you use milk cheese, but what I'm thinking about is that kind of, again, the farmhousey flavour, because that gives that farmhousey feel, that kind of almost coarseness, but not coarse. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Rural.
Rural. You can taste the hillside it was made on.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Well, okay, let's move to the score.
Score. All right, yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. We do that as well, you know.
I know. I know. I was trying to work it out. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Score.
7.99.
That's going to be a massive factor in how I'm going to score this. Also, because this is, I said, it's a Merlot which I wouldn't probably usually go for. But if I'd have tasted that and I'd have known that that's that price, and I'd have known I could have that block of cheddar with it and knowing what they would do together, I reckon I would score that which is quite all right.
Okay. I'd go 81.
I've gone for 85.
Oh, right.
I know.
Oh, well, it's only 4 away. Yes.
Oh yeah, it was,
I think it's because you're probably in a better position to imagine what it's going to taste like with that cheese than me.
And I think I've been pleasantly surprised thinking, Merlot, meh, it's all right, but that one's proved to me it's actually quite good.
Yeah, excellent. Guys, if you have any Merlots that you'd like to recommend, then please let us know. And we're going to flip now to a viewer's question. So this episode's question comes from Chris Chambers. And the question he's asked is, I understand how they make white and red wines. How do they make rosé wines?
Okay, Chris, I used to go to school with a young man called Chris Chambers.
Did you?
Yeah, I did, yeah. So, I mean, if this is the Chris, hi, how are you doing? Hope you're well. That's a long time ago. So to make a rosé wine...
excuse me, and if you're not, still, hope you're okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was rude. But yes, so to make a rosé wine, it's very similar as to how they make the red wine. In that,
but perhaps for the viewers that don't know, we just
we'll go through it. So without patronising away, because this is what this channel's about. Is so to make if you squeeze a white grape and a red grape, same colour juice comes out. So to make a red wine or a rosé, all we do is we keep the grape skins on top of the juice, basically. So it imparts the colour. So to make a rosé wine, we leave that on for a much shorter time and then remove it. So you just get that pink hue. And then to make a red wine, we leave it on for much longer to make the red wines where it pulls more of the colour out of there. But yeah, to make a rosé, they just leave it on for a short amount of time, which is called sur lie or on the lees, is the description of it. But yeah, that's all it is.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, I hope that answers your question. If anyone else has any questions, then please just drop us a line. We'll be pleased to try and answer. So until next time, guys, when hopefully we'll be discovering another wine that surprises us positively. Chin chin.
Chin chin.